Have you ever taken someone at their word only to find later they meant something else completely? And then wondered, how was I supposed to know that? If you're someone who believes that people mean what they say, you've probably been confused or completely frustrated with the discovery that 91% of people, this is some fake made up number, just feels absolutely real to me, that 91% of people that you've met say one thing and mean another. And not only that, they say one thing and mean another, but it's understood and accepted by those 91% of people that they mean something other than the words they actually said. Oh, that's so frustrating for me. No wonder why autistic people think everyone has a secret social rule book. Today, I'm not going to try and teach you how to read between the lines, but I'm going to walk you through a few things. I'm going to walk you through why literal language makes complete sense for your brain and how it can be an advantage, how you can cut through the stress of trying to identify hidden meaning in everyday phrases. This is so you can stay connected without constantly second-guessing yourself. Are you ready? Let's go. What's going on? My name is Coach Lee Hopkins. My pronouns are he, him, his, and you're listening to the Patterns of Possibility podcast, the podcast for late identified autistic adults who want real relationships without fake masks. Let's talk connection, clarity, and showing up as your authentic self. When I was 17, I was deeply involved in the Christian church, and I asked many questions about things that didn't line up to me. And as a result of this, one of the deaconesses took me out for a Saturday breakfast. If you don't know what a deaconess is, she's responsible for teaching and mentoring younger members of the church, leading Bible studies, prayer groups, and more. So I remember vividly that she wanted to talk to me so she can get to know me. Looking back, she probably wanted to answer some of those questions that I had. She talked about some of the things in the Bible, but honestly, I couldn't understand the things she was saying to me. The conversation was a blur, but overall it seemed like she wanted me to draw conclusions from Bible stories rather than take it at its word. And I responded with, I don't understand sarcasm. I remember that line very vividly. And I'll never forget her response. Oh, really? Followed by silence. And I don't think she said anything more until it was time to get the check. I shared that story because I think it's a demonstration of how people are very comfortable interpreting words to mean whatever they want, even though those words have clear definitions that we already agreed upon. This is a concept I couldn't wrap my head around and continue to stay in. Interpretation was this, interpretation was that, and I left Christianity in my early 20s because I just couldn't get with the program. But that is a story for another day. So, if you're like me and assume words are information and people carefully choose them when they speak, then your brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. We have decided what the words mean, and when you use them this way, this is what it means. I thought we were on the same page. That's the way my brain works, and that's probably the way your brain works too. That's why we have words to define things, just so we can all understand and get on the same page. And I think one benefit of this literal thinking is that it gives you an advantage when it comes to following instructions accurately. Autistic people and those who use literal language make the best technical writers, scientists, programmers, and coders because their brain treats the world as precise instructions and not suggestions. Even in cooking, if the directions say 375 degrees for 22 minutes, you follow those instructions and you get the consistent results. You also would arrive on time because time means what it says. Unless maybe you're an ADHDer or subscribe to time as a social construct. But you get what I'm saying here. If you use manuals or checklists and systems that are designed the way they're supposed to instead of guessing, it reduces mistakes and mental load. That's what the directions are there for. That's what words are there for. That's what the definition of words are there for, so that we can understand each other in clear, repeatable ways, right? So that's why I consider it a superpower. But in the same breath, if you viewed this literal thinking as a superpower that is akin to Superman's super hearing, that is his ability to hear all things at all times, if it's not controlled, it can feel more like a burden. Imagine this. Imagine Superman hearing every woman screaming for help because the unthinkable is happening, or a kid who is crying themselves to bed at night because they've been separated from their family, while he's in the middle of dinner with Lois Lane. Not convenient for him because he has to tune out the other information to focus on what's happening now. That's dinner with Lois Lane. The point is, it takes extra energy and awareness to turn down the superpower to do everyday, ordinary things. And if 91% of people, totally made up number, of people communicate differently than you do, then it's up to you to notice that people can't meet you exactly where you are. In fact, they can't even fathom what it's like. Let that sink in. Let's look at Lois Lane sitting there having dinner with Superman. Lois doesn't even know what it's like to have to filter out millions of tiny sounds so she can give her all to just one person. And Superman knows that Lois doesn't have the same abilities. They have a mutual understanding of what each of them is experiencing and can set expectations according to it. And this is how I cut through the stress of everyday conversations. I know that most people that I meet are not going to be literal thinkers. And it only stresses me out to believe that they can communicate on my level. And I don't want to deal with that extra stress. So I just believe that some people will speak literally, some people will speak loosely. Neither is wrong. I will not judge. However, I know how I would like to speak with people, and I don't want to go through the confusion of trying to figure out what they mean to say. I'd rather them say it directly to me, but I also like to give them a chance, an opportunity to do so. Because if the goal of communicating with each other is to understand, if they're speaking loosely, then I'm not going to get the message really clearly. I'm going to be frustrated. I'm going to be annoyed. And then I'm going to speak to them directly and ask them to say something to me directly. And they're going to be offended. They won't be able to find the words. They don't know how to do the thing that I need them to do. We have a miscommunication, and it doesn't feel good for either of us. So what I do for people that I actually care about and want to maintain a connection with is I will talk about the gap. I'll talk about the thing that I misunderstood or they misunderstood or is not clear or their feelings about it. Because chances are, if I'm talking in a very direct, literal tone, then they may get offended by the directness of it. And I will notice that, and I will allow them space to feel their feelings about it. I'm not going to change, just so they know. And that's not fair to say. But I will work to communicate in a way that helps them hear my message. And that's what it's all about. That's what I think connection is all about. So I will work in a way that helps them hear my message. And in turn, because I only do this for people I care about and I want to really connect with, they will do the same for me. I can explain the gap. I could say, look, I really didn't understand. I was confused about XYZ. So that they understand how to communicate with me. As I think that people may say, oh, this is a weird thing to do, but it's not. Essentially, everyone does this to some kind of degree. They learn how to love and communicate with each other. They learn what people like and what they don't like. And it's no different when we use the words to speak our experiences to other people. The whole concept, I think, of communication is for you to get your message to someone so that they can understand what you're saying. After you've had a conversation, leaving confused is just, silly, I think. It's silly. If the purpose was to let them know that the dance recital is at 7:30 p.m. and they leave confused thinking that there's a basketball game going on at 10:30 in the morning, then something is absolutely wrong. Something is absolutely wrong. And that's kind of what it feels like when you communicate two different ways. The message gets crossed. So we have to recalibrate and talk about how the message can be delivered so each person can hear it. So how do you know if it's worth your time to put an effort and energy into closing this gap? Well, you're going to find out when you try it. Just have to try it. Honestly, just try it and see how it feels, how receptive. Because if you're doing all the heavy lifting and trying to understand while they're not giving you any understanding, then it's definitely not going to work. And in my own personal life, this is what I've seen happen. I've seen people refuse, flat out refuse, red flag. They're going to shame you for not getting it, red flag. They're going to shame you for not understanding what they said to you. Now listen, there's a thing about this being shame coming up here, trying to shame you. It is on the communicator. It's on the communicator to convey the message. Sure, you work together as a team to figure it out if necessary. But listen, it's on the communicator to convey the message. So them shaming you is not taking responsibility for the fact that they could not clearly convey the message to you. It's your problem, not theirs. That's what they're saying to you. Red flag. Run away from those people screaming. That's what I do. I scream. But pay attention to that. In these moments, I want you to know that you might feel awful, but it's good information about their character. In these situations, I do feel 100% confident in drawing the conclusion that they don't have the capacity or the skills to do this critical communication exercise. It's not your fault, and it's not your job to teach them. If they shame you, even more information about them. They're not comfortable with having to clarify or explain because it hurts their ego. Yeah, this has nothing to do with me. It's everything to do with them, their childhood, and the therapist they probably think they don't need. Remember, again, the goal of communication is to understand each other. They will do what it takes to help you understand if they care. So have you ever heard any phrases like, "You're too literal, just read between the lines"? You know what I mean. Those place the burden on you to guess instead of relying on the speaker to be clear. And if there's no clarity for you, there's no point in the communication, and it's best to just limit your time with them. So let me tell you a quick story about my professional life. So I was working with a new person who came from a culture where they never accepted compliments. It was considered rude. And I didn't know that. So I gave him a genuine compliment on the work that he did. He refused it and then complimented me. So I was like, "No, you're really good at what you do." And then he refused it again and said, "No, not like you." I was annoyed that he didn't see what I thought of his work. And I wanted to stop this stupid dismissal of my genuine feelings. So the next time he said, "You're the best," I accepted. I said, "Yeah, I am." And he froze for a good 5 seconds. It was like he short-circuited or something, really. And I was confused. So I studied his face. And then he just walked away. He didn't say anything else. I shared this with you because you may have had an experience like this, or you might see communication challenges come up like that. And after a misunderstanding, maybe neither of you will know what to do in these situations. Man, I still feel something by that. Looking back, I'm thinking now a simple explanation would have cleared up how we approach that conversation in the future. He'd say something like, "I'm used to complimenting until one of us runs out of breath. It's considered respectful." And then I'd say, "I'm used to accepting praise and saying what's real and honest about how I feel." Then, together, we'd come up with a solution for compliments. It could be anything from I'd never compliment him again, to he'd accept my compliment on the first try, to I'll do the compliment dance until I'm blue in the face because I respect him and his communication style. Unfortunately, we've never had that conversation, partly because workplace culture didn't encourage it, and also I think neither of us knew what to say to initiate that conversation. Now, that was in a work conversation. In your personal life, it's different in the sense that there's no company or cultural pressure stopping you from talking. It's just you, your communication skills, and your desire to understand and be understood. So after misunderstandings, you can reflect and return to the conversation. Some of the things that I try and I recommend that you might try yourself is to share context. I would say, I would tell them directly, of course, this is my communication style, that I tend to take things literally. So I like being clear about plans so that they don't give me some plans that are kind of vague. I just won't accept them. Here's what I'm going to do. If you give me vague plans, I will ask more questions to get clarity for them. And so it's actually setting up a boundary of your communication style. You just let everyone who needs to know your communication style so that you can get the information that you need and so that they can feel heard and understood. That is what really creates the connection. And I never fully expect people to adjust because then they would just do all the work. I know that sometimes they may forget things. That's why I ask them questions, right? It's communication being a two-way street, as people say. So with that being said, I have 4 more practical ways you can reduce this stress of communication and close that communication gap. 1, you can ask clarifying questions early. And I know that clarifying questions scare a lot of people, annoy a lot of people, but trust me, those people who want to communicate with you will respect and appreciate the clarifying question because they want you to get the information, they want you to understand. So make sure you ask clarifying questions early. Second thing you can do is respond to the words, not the implication. If you respond to the words that they say, like for example, feel free to reach out anytime, you can ask, when you say that, do you mean literally or casually? They'll correct you and they'll say, reach out if it's urgent and not before 10 p.m. because they're not answering messages after that, right? So they make it very clear what the expectations are. You just needed to ask the question to make sure you understood, and they made sure that you understood. The third thing you can do is lean into this pattern recognition skill that you have. Some people speak loosely and some people speak precisely. Just notice that. Notice that, okay? And then 4, adjust your expectations. They may not remember that you're a literal thinker and know how to communicate with you perfectly. And you may forget that they speak loosely and they will leave out some details you have to ask them. If you're going to get annoyed by this and frustrated by this, it's going to gum up the works of the communication. Just consider it as part of the way you connect with each other. Remember, it is a team effort to close that communication gap. Don't blame them. They don't blame you. You work together to get the communication through. And oh hey, if you want to meet other literal thinkers, come to one of my events. We have Unmasked conversations on Saturdays. At this event, a few of your peers ask me relationship questions, and I give actionable steps and scripts to help them take a clear next step. You don't have to ask a question to attend. You can simply be in a space and learn from listening how I support people with the same challenges. Space is limited to just 10 people, so go to patternsofpossibility.com/events to get your spot and check out other events that are happening weekly. And you also have the structured social hour happening on last Saturday of the month for those who want to skip the small talk. Go to patternsofpossibility.com/events to register. I'll see you there. All right, let's wrap this up. If you've heard something today that has helped you see yourself in relationships a little differently, then I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can leave a comment here, or you can reach me at patternsofpossibility@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, if you could take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe, it really helps more people find these conversations and join our growing community. And speaking of community, if you're looking for a space where you can express yourself and be met with curiosity rather than rejection as a late diagnosed autistic adult, then come visit thepatternsofpossibility.com and find your community there. Learn more about what we're doing. We're connecting with others. You can be yourself and authenticity in this space. Find other people who've had your experiences, who know what you're going through, so you don't have to do this alone. Until next time, take care of your energy and remember that connection starts when you allow yourself to be seen.